In the previous video, we saw the intuition behind the main result in the Malthusian model, the fact that GDP per capita and population can't grow in the long term. As long as humanity raises its head above water and starts living better, it also starts making more kids, which puts a drag on per capita income growth. This is why we've had a self-perpetuating outcome in the model, which kept humanity poor for so long. So here are the two features of the model that we need to keep track of. First, the constant per capita income in the long run. And second, the constant population. However, we did not consider the fact that there can be technological progress after all. So what happens with the outcomes in the model when there is technological progress? Let's start with an old equilibrium in which people live at their subsistence level of income. Remember, the subsistence level of income is such that there is no incentive to raise more kids because you can't afford them. You can't just feed them. However, at the same time, population does not decline because it has just enough to survive. In short, subsistence level of income is when the situation is barely livable. So, in this environment, we allow for technological progress. Technological progress raises productivity and living standards. The rise of living standards raises the demand for kids, and as a result, the population rises. But as this happens, land per farmer falls, which means each farmer can produce less than before. With the fall in the average product per farmer, the average incomes also fall until there is a new equilibrium. Notice that this equilibrium happens at a higher level of population. So the world population has increased, but in the long run, the income is still constant. Let's put this intuition on a graph. To understand the model, there are two relationships we need to put on a graph. First, it is the fact that wages decline with the rise of population. As population grows, average incomes and wages tend to go down because technological progress does not exist. However, we need to also consider the fact that as wages rise, people have more incentives to reproduce and give birth to children. So there will be wages above which population will rise, and there will be wages below which population will fall, because it cannot sustain itself. Let's call this wage subsistence wage. It is good to know that it is a rather low wage, a wage which guarantees that population will barely stay constant. Points A and A prime on the two graphs represent the subsistence level of income. Notice that the income at point B represents an income level which typically happens at low population levels, but also which gives incentives to produce, to people to give more birth, to reproduce, basically. However, again, as population rises because of more births, wages fall back to subsistence levels. So this is the basic setup of the model. Now, let's allow for an improved technology in this economy. Improved technology means that every farmer will be able to produce more. What this means is that the new technology raises the level of income at each level of population. So, if we start with a level of population corresponding to the subsistence level of wages, suddenly all these guys will be living the dream. They will have a much higher wage at point D. However, notice that at point D, people have an incentive to go forth and multiply, as Reverend Malthus would have put it. But higher population growth will immediately slide humanity down the wage curve. The reason is that when population of farmers grows, the average product of those farmers goes down. and there is less product to derive income from. So, population rises, but income falls. Wages go down to subsistence level, and the only substantial change is that there are more people living on this planet, but the misery is still the same. An important question is then, is this model consistent with the data? Let's turn to the data and start at the end of the 13th century, when population in England was 5 million, and the wages were about 55% of their level in the mid-19th century. As population declined, wages rose, and as wages rose, population declined. In other words, there was a strong negative correlation between population and wages, just as the model predicted. As a result, more than 3 centuries later, the English population and income were approximately where they started. Malthus has got it right, or so it seemed at the time. What Malthus was missing was the transforming impact of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, as we have discussed in earlier videos this week, allowed for a change in living standards unseen before. We will discuss the details of this escape during the live lecture this week. It's time to summarize what we've learned this week. Thanks for watching.